Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the Class E Podcast. I'm your host, Mary Sturgill. This is the podcast that's brought to you through a partnership between the Hill Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship here at Furman University and the Communication Studies Department. This episode of the Class E Podcast is a special episode taped in front of a live studio audience. Here is that conversation. Let's give our guest, Sali Christeson, a big round of applause. Thank you so much for joining us today. You know, it's good to see you in person.
Thanks for having me, yes.
Because last time we spoke, we were on Zoom. So, guys, if you want to listen to, we've done a podcast previously with Sali. You can go to the Class E Podcast page and you can listen to that previous conversation. So this is really a continuation of that conversation. So for the folks who don't know, Sali, can you kind of give us a quick rundown of how you began your company? Because you were not always in fashion.
Sure. So my background is actually in business, finance, and in tech. So I graduated from Furman and immediately just picked up and moved to Chicago, not knowing anyone there. And this was during the recession. And I figured, I'll just go there and figure it out, get a job. It'll be a great experience. So I did that, and I ended up working in wealth management at a privately owned bank in Chicago. I came back for my MBA, which was always the plan. I got my international MBA at South Carolina and studied supply chain, so an emphasis on supply chain. And then from there, I got hired at Cisco Systems and did a leadership rotational development program at Cisco. So basically a 2-year crash course in all the major functions within supply chain. All of this, in my mind, was working towards starting a company eventually, but not really knowing what I was going to start. But just for the way I work, I really wanted that holistic understanding, both through academia as well as a hands-on experience of how business worked, and just sort of understanding myself and other people and how to effectively grow an organization. And then my most recent role was at Cisco. I worked on the cloud team. It was a new initiative at Cisco. We were very much playing catch up. They put $1 billion in. We grew a team from 0 to 250 in a year. And I got to manage and build the customer component of that. So really technical role. I got to grow a team of 16. It was the craziest experience of my life. And towards the end of that, I read a study that showed that women are judged based on appearance. And for the first time, they quantified the impact of what you wear on your bottom line over your lifetime. It ends up having a 20 to 40% effect on your income over your life as a female, which is insane and unacceptable. And so that was really the catalyst for me, because finding workwear that was functional and stylish and honestly just easy to find and wasn't a total time suck was always a problem for myself and my peer group. And so I quit without having done anything, because I knew that was the only way to really commit to doing this, and just sort of had an approach of whatever happens, it'll be a great experience, and I can always re-enter the corporate world. And that was in 2014, I put in my notice. In 2016 actually, we launched, really with the goal of solving a very real problem with the clothing itself, but on top of that, really leveraging the power of brand to visually inspire women to be bold, push the envelope, go for it, and offer whatever tools that might be useful for women as they navigate their careers.
Yeah, I want to go back to that, what you said about the 20 to 40% salary difference that you could make based on your clothes, based on what you wear. And all we have in most of the market, you saw this, is gray and black and blue, maybe suits. And that's all. How are you fixing that problem?
Yeah, so fundamentally, time is so valuable as a corporate woman, especially with our core consumer. And so we want her to spend her time with her family or with her career, but not out in the world trying to find the right outfit and being in your head about it. And so, unfortunately, fashion companies and retailers, and this isn't atypical across all industries, but as you move to the top, they're male dominated. So in leadership positions, you have men making decisions about what women will wear or what shows up on the shelves, and without a real understanding or conversation with the women that are wearing the clothes. And so for me, as the customer coming into this space, I know that I need function out of my clothing. I want pockets, for example, really seemingly basic things that just aren't given to women. Also style, color, quality, just something that gives me confidence, and ultimately like that really is our overarching filter at every touch point. Like, how do we give women confidence? Because if you're wearing something you feel great in, you just show up differently. And we really want to allow women to step in to whatever situation they are in, knowing how gender imbalanced things are, and at least not be thinking about what they're wearing and only getting confidence from that and leveraging it as a tool to grow their career and presence, because you really can use it to your advantage.
Right. I had a consultant one time who told me when I was a news anchor, don't wear anything that doesn't make you feel like $1 million, right? Because if you aren't satisfied with what you have on, you're not going to perform at 100%.
Correct.
Right. I want to talk just the fact that you created this company to deal with this inequity, right, is an example of how you care. It's putting, your passion into this. Can you talk a little bit more about the programs and the projects that you, specifically the supermajority, how you got involved with them?
Sure. Yeah. So our mission is to give women tools to take their seat at the table. And so I think that having a physical product as our foundation is important, because it's just sort of a physical reminder of like the community that exists around you wherever you show up. And so we, since inception, have really been experimenting with ways that we really can add value beyond that. And so we've had events where there's programming really focused on the individual, such that you could walk away and have a tool and build your skill set that will add value to you. And it's gender neutral. So it's like we've had events with male coaches and female coaches and male participants and female participants, but it's all through the lens of what females are experiencing differently. And so we've done speed negotiating workshops where your takeaway is a worksheet that allows you to best prepare for every negotiation going forward. I think what was interesting about that was the male executives recognized that, I'm in a position of power, and females, when they try and negotiate their salary, are having a different experience than men. So we all have heard negotiate your salary, women don't ask. Well, women do oftentimes ask, because we all have heard that advice, and you get more pushback. And so I think it was just it was a great step towards what we want to do with the brand in a larger way. So we were really just experimenting with programming like that and in-person events. And then once we felt like we really honed in on how we could add value, we really wanted to scale it by partnering with Supermajority this past year around the election. Supermajority is a nonprofit focused on mobilizing women to vote and vote for their rights. It's nonpartisan, but it really encourages women to show up and vote, oftentimes for female candidates, but really it's an effort to raise awareness and inform women around the issues. And so we created a hot pink suit, and we basically, again, it goes back to that visual identifier. So it was sort of a way to really bring the cause around one physical, very visual thing. And we launched a program centered around getting women to vote in the presidential election. And it ended up going viral, and it had very real impact, which is always our measure. So we've got hundreds of thousands of volunteers, phone banking, text banking, and doing all sorts of things around the election. We got, we don't know the exact numbers, but tons of women voting that weren't planning on voting. So it was a really great initiative, and for our team it was great too, because it just gave us energy around something so much bigger than us,
Yeah, for sure. So where all you're based in New York, and you have a store in Seattle, is that correct?
We don't, COVID.
Oh, let's talk about that, because let's talk about, last time I talked to you was at the beginning of the pandemic, and we talked about some pivots that she had made, and one of those was getting ready to close the store. But you saw the pandemic coming, and there were things that you did to kind of mitigate some of the issues that might arise for you. Talk about some of those things that you did, and then we'll jump again to today.
Sure, yeah. So the pandemic, I think for a ton of companies and a lot of my peers, the pandemic was a massive unlock for their businesses. So things like at home, dishware or fingernail polish or what have you. For a lot of those companies, they thrived during the pandemic. As a workwear company, when women are not going to work, as you can imagine, the impact was quite significant. And we had just built out a store in LA, a store in San Francisco, a store in New York, and a store in DC. And so in March, very early on, we sort of saw the writing on the wall in terms of what was coming before I think a lot of people did. And so we immediately made the decision to go as lean as possible. And that came with a lot of tough decisions. We had to furlough some of our staff members. We had to lay people off. I negotiated out of 3 of our leases. I think deals that I wouldn't have been able to negotiate had I not done it so soon and early. And then I really focused on survival. So basically, now we're sort of on the other side of it. The competitive landscape's entirely wiped out. We spent the last 18 months focused on strategy and how to take all of our learnings to date and really focus on capitalizing on the opportunity post-COVID when women haven't now shopped for workwear in 18 plus months and are all looking to replenish their entire wardrobe. So there's a lot of delayed consumerism, and so we really just stepped back and focused on survival. It was absolutely the right decision because now we're seeing the upside of that.
Right. So now, we're not out of the pandemic yet. What changes are you seeing?
Yeah, so the workwear search is up 165%. We're starting to see women they're coming back in. Their bodies have changed over the last 2 years.
Isn't that the truth?
Or they just are sick of their closet. Like they just want to start fresh. And we're now looking at hybrid work. And so a lot of women are going back in, men and women, but a lot of offices are reopening a couple of days a week. But when women go in, they're wanting to really dress up and show up and invest in that. So we're seeing women come back in and just purchase in a big way and engage in a really interesting way. So, and we're in the early days of that. I think spring 2022 is going to be the big hit.
Right.
So
let's talk, I want to come back to the pandemic for just a second. But before that, I want to talk about the other groups that you're involved with. You're involved with the supermajority. Last time we talked to you, you were working on something with Planned Parenthood. What happened with that?
We haven't done anything with them, but we did launch an initiative in July around back to work. And we partnered with an organization called Time's Up that's focused on workplace gender equity, as well as LinkedIn and Cisco WebEx. And the premise was over 2 million women in the US are out of jobs as a result of COVID and primarily due to caregiving responsibilities. The majority of those women that were impacted are women of color. And it felt like there was a lot of conversation happening around this issue, but no action was really attached to it. And so we onboarded over 60 companies, Amazon, Apple, Google, LinkedIn, Cisco, Ulta, Glossier, so companies of all sizes. We worked with their recruiters to make jobs available through a portal on our website. And invited women that were impacted to come and apply for jobs, and we connected them directly with recruiters. And so the goal for the initiative was to get women hired and to get them back into the workforce because it is a crisis and it is urgent. And so it's all around, honestly, creating some immediacy around getting women back because the longer you stay out, the harder it becomes to reenter.
Right. As a matter of fact, I think the UN says that for every 100 men, there are currently 118 women who are out of a job.
Yeah.
And that's only going to get worse by 2030. Yeah. So what you're doing is helping, I'm sure.
Yeah, in the Argent piece, we did our first ever sale, but it was a massive sale. So we did 50 to 85% off. We gave away pieces to women that really needed it, women that were interviewing and couldn't afford, the suit they needed to show up on the Zoom call or in person. We were gifting suits. So that was our small piece, I would say, of the broader initiative. LinkedIn obviously has the job search platform, gave away some premium memberships. So really just tools trying to get women back into the workforce.
Right. What is your hope that happens in the next few months with what you're projecting? We'll see more women hitting the workforce, but what about after that?
For Argent or for women?
For Argent and women both. Because I think they're intertwined.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I think that there is a lot of overdue conversation happening around the care infrastructure.
Yes.
And so we're starting to see things from a policy perspective. And when we talk about care infrastructure, it means caregiving for both children and elders, right, or anyone that might need it in your life. And oftentimes women shoulder that burden. Right. And corporations haven't been set up to support women with those responsibilities. And so a lot of conversation is happening on the corporate side in terms of how they can support women as they have kids or as they have, aging parents. I think the flip side of the coin, I guess, is getting men involved as well, in traditionally female roles. And so just the conversation, I think, continuing to have it is important. And then on the Argent side, I mean, this is much more tactical, but we are in conversations with Nordstrom about a Nordstrom launch finally in March of next year. We've been in conversation with them for a few years. We were planning a June 2020 launch, and here we are. Right. But we're going to do a huge marketing activation with them, a women's conference in partnership with Nordstrom to activate our launch with them. And then we just introduced our fall collection, which is our first collection in 2 years. Mm-hmm. Which is exciting, and we're turning all of our marketing back on and I think hitting a little bit early to the return to work and establishing ourselves as the go-to workwear brand.
Who do you want to work with next on the social issue front?
So right now we're doing some collaboration, so more on the brand side. On the partnership side, we have a couple of interested groups. I'm not sure yet. I don't want to disclose too much, but in the spring of 23, there's a gender neutral concept that we have that we're really excited about. So catering to the LGBTQ community.
Excellent, excellent. What advice do you have we have many budding entrepreneurs in this crowd, do you have for these folks? Entrepreneurship, I think, is glamorized in a lot of ways, and it's wonderful. And I think that, and I was mentioning this to, I think, Anthony, an entrepreneurial mindset will only benefit you wherever you go. And so I think I was very much an intrapreneur with an I in places like Cisco, and brought that entrepreneurial mindset into a large organization. And so I think it's not for everyone. I think if you have to understand yourself as much as possible and have conviction in whatever it is that you're building, because it's totally a slog and you get beat up on the journey, and you're working. Yes, you're creating your own schedule, but it's on your mind at all times. So it's a different career path, but it's the best one for me. And I think that learning it in school and having programs like Furman's introducing is invaluable, to be honest. Like, I'm a huge fan of the academia coupled with the real world experience, and so being able to do both, I think, is really important. But it's a tough career path. So not for the weak at heart.
Yes, correct.
I want to ask you about what we can do. We have midterms coming up, so I'm going to circle back around to the election. What we can do, or what you're doing, to continue the momentum you had, the supermajority had in this last election. Yeah,
so for us, we developed a lot of relationships with now candidates, but women that were thinking about running for office, that are running for office. So we support them in our own way, which is, dressing them primarily, right, but also opening up our network to them. And then we were obviously amplifying the great work that Supermajority is doing during our partnership with them, but we continue to plug them, because that's the best way, honestly, to get involved, is to really plug in through organizations like that are their sole mission is educating on these issues and getting women to show up.
Yeah. How do you get people interested in your clothes, from a marketing perspective?
Because
we have a lot of marketing people in here who probably want to know this answer.
Yeah, so I think marketing in today's startup world, direct-to-consumer world, is so challenging in light of all the iOS changes coming out of Apple. So they redid all their privacy, so it's really constrained companies' abilities to advertise on Facebook, which historically has been the best customer acquisition channel for, all companies.
Right.
So
it raises sales something like 14%.
Yeah, it's. I love Apple, so I support the decision. But from like a business perspective, it's a tough one. From a clothing perspective, I'd say we're visually unique and our quality is unique.
Absolutely.
So we manufacture in Portugal and Manhattan with premium fabrics, and we're direct to consumer. So you really just can't get this quality at this price point. Our photography also impacts, I think, how consumers receive the brand and the quality of the clothing. And then it's about touching and feeling and trying on the product. The fit is just superior. And then the color really sets us apart. We've really become known for bold colors that I think sort of speak to our mission. I think they go hand in hand. So from a product perspective, I think those are all of our differentiators as well as function. And then on the marketing side, this leans into the marketing side a little bit. We've had the honor of dressing incredible women at all levels across different industries, and that just highlights how underrepresented like this category is and this product is. And so that's also an important acquisition tool, to be honest. Like we definitely capture customers as a result of dressing a Kamala Harris or a Meghan Markle or whoever. And then as we start thinking about marketing in today's world, Facebook is still an important channel, specifically Instagram. Mm-hmm. TikTok is becoming a very important channel. We're doing print for the first time, so we have a catalog dropping in 2 weeks. I think collaborations are the lowest cost way to acquire customers now, so brand-aligned partnerships and collaborations. What else are we doing? Out of home, so in Manhattan specifically, which is where we're now we're headquartered, but doing things like billboards, post-no bills, really taking out physical space.
So I want my digital storytelling students to listen to that, because you're hitting all the different points that we talk about in that class, really.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it's been a firsthand exercise of playing with different levers and seeing what works and what doesn't. Podcast advertisements are a new channel too. There is a lot that you can do, but direct-to-consumer has gotten a lot noisier in light of COVID. Right. And so figuring out how to break through is becoming harder and harder. Another really valuable way to do that is through influencers, ambassador, affiliate, things like that. So finding individuals that are genuinely and authentically brand aligned, that are amplifying what you're doing to their followers.
Yeah. You mentioned a few of the people who you've dressed. Kamala Harris, Meghan Markle, Hillary Clinton, Gloria Steinem. Who have you not dressed who you would like to dress?
Michelle Obama, Laverne Cox, Harry Styles. Those are the ones that are in the works, right. So they're most top of mind. I think that generally our filter is incredible women doing incredible things that align with our mission. So there are a lot of women that fall into that bucket, but those three and allies. So like Harry Styles is an interesting one because we're starting to see a lot more neutral dressing. Right. You saw what's his name? Pete Davidson recently wore a dress. Russell Westbrook recently in a Tom Brown skirt. So I think dressing allies that have been supportive of our cause, because we have a lot of men in our corner as well, and that's always been a focus for us, is involving men in the conversation and really not making it an echo chamber that's women talking to one another about women-specific issues. It takes all of us to inspire change. So,
in addition to the bright colors, which I absolutely love, because as a news anchor, I really wanted bright colors on the set, and it was hard to find, And when I was out in the field, those pockets really would have come in handy, because I'm wearing mics and I'm carrying microphones and I'm carrying all this stuff, right? So I would have had a microphone and my phones, because I had 2 phones and all that, in my pockets. What is this? And this is going to hopefully be not too interesting or not too out there. Not interesting.
I'll make it fun.
Yeah. What is the weirdest thing that you've ever heard that somebody carried in their pocket?
Whoa. That's a good question. And people have told me all sorts of things, and I'm like drawing a total blank. So the woman who supports Kamala Harris, does anyone watch Veep? Okay, so the buster of Kamala Harris, she wears Argent. And she will send, I mean, she's just loaded down with everything imaginable at all times.
Right.
But I don't
Survival kit.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be impressed by how much one can carry in one of these things. I don't have a good answer for that, though. I'm sorry.
All right, she'll think on that one. All right, I think we want to open it up to students for questions. So if you have a question, please come up to the microphone. Emma, will you turn that microphone around so that they can get to it? And come up to the microphone, you'll ask your question, and if you have any questions, line up behind each other so that we can not waste too much time. Emma, what is our time, actually? Okay, so we're good. We got about 20 minutes. So anybody have any questions? Ian, you have a question? No. He's here. Okay, come on up. Say your name and then ask your question.
Hi, my name is Chase. I'm a business major, and you briefly mentioned that COVID had a deep effect on your business. I'm just kind of wondering numerically, what did that look like? And then now with women finally going back to work, are you seeing it rebound? Have you reached those levels, maybe surpassed what you were at before?
Love that question. So pre-COVID, so this is January, February 2020, best months we've had in the business. We were on the path we needed to be on, and we were getting ready for a Nordstrom launch in June of 2020, which is just diversifying our channels. And that's another, and I didn't even mention this from a marketing perspective, that's the unlock, is more traditional retail approach, to be honest. So this is not unique to my story. Most companies, just given where the economy was, were really thriving in January and February of 2020. And then, I'm not kidding, overnight in March, we went from, maybe like 20 or 30,000 one day to 0 the next day. So, it was a stark change, and we went from being obsessive about revenue to being obsessive about all of our operating expenses and just trying to cut wherever we could because we weren't bringing in any revenue for a long time. The Supermajority initiative that I mentioned, we sold out of a hot pink suit within 24 hours, and that was supposed to last us for a couple months, so that was helpful, but not that helpful, honestly, for what we traded for it. Now coming out of it, so winding down was hard, and that was the most challenging thing I've ever had to do in business. Scaling back up is more challenging. So now and this is way more fun. Now it's about team building. You have to be just a little bit ahead of the growth. And we've spent the last year and a half focused on strategy completely. So what's our optimal product mix? What are our hero styles? How do we build out a core business that really, those are your cash cow products that are generating all of your revenue? How do I make it formulaic so it's much cheaper and easier for me to introduce new products? So let's say a hero blazer style, but in a different color. How do I make sure that I'm tying out tops down and bottoms up, with my numbers? I would just say we're now doing things we should have been doing, but as an entrepreneur, you don't have time to do everything, so you sacrifice a lot and you're always constantly playing catch up. So the benefit is now we're set up for rapid growth, but we're still navigating through that. So last month we did, what month are we in now? September. Last month we did 400,000, and now we're on the trajectory to do around that each month for the remainder of the year. And then a Nordstrom launch next year. We're trying to ramp to 12 million next year. So that's a huge jump, just from a team growth and product perspective. So that's our current path.
Yeah. So Nordstrom is first. Who is next on your list for that?
Nordstrom exclusively for now.
Okay.
Yeah, so reason being, so we're really hyper obsessive about brand, and so we historically have declined any wholesale relationship, really any partnership, collaboration, anything, to the point, to the detriment of sales for sure, but to the to benefit longevity of the business and the brand. Now, I think COVID really challenged all founders to diversify their sales channels to de-risk the business, and that's exactly what we're doing with the Nordstrom. We know that our consumer is going there. We know that that consumer does not know about Argent, and we know that we stand out on a sales floor. And so that coupled with the success we've had with Supermajority and with our Back to Work initiative makes Nordstrom want to invest in the marketing activation piece as well, which is just like augmentative, is that a word? To the wholesale buy. Right. So their marketing department is separate from the wholesale buyer. They're investing money in marketing our brand because it benefits their audience, and that's cheap to them, but it's of a lot of value to me. Right. So yeah, that is going to be an exclusive relationship for us, and then we'll go from there. But that's definitely a more traditional retail path. I think you'll see that a lot more now because direct-to-consumer businesses are so challenged.
Right. Did you close all of your brick and mortar stores?
New York's open.
New York's open. Okay.
It's by appointment. It's not back up and fully running, but New York is still open.
How many employees do you currently have?
Right now, 8.
8 employees.
So yeah, so we're
You're doing all that with 8 employees.
Yeah, so we're scaling back right now. So we're, we should be, this is to address the question, but we went down to 3. Mm-hmm. We're now back up to 8. We are projecting 14 this fall, 22 spring, 30 by next fall. Mm-hmm. That's rapid growth. The people component, in my experience, is the most challenging part. There are many challenging parts about starting a company. The people component and managing personalities and rapid growth and bringing everyone together in a way that works is really, really hard and takes a lot of focus when you really don't want to be spending time away from growing your business, but it's necessary and it's challenging in my experience.
What are the positions you'll be looking for? Because I know we have some seniors in here who might be looking for something.
Great. Yeah, social media right now is top for me. We have not been able to find a good person to manage social for us, and that takes someone that's just young, energetic, and passionate, in my opinion. A variety of roles. So marketing right now is where we're hiring mostly. Entry-level graphic designers, what else? A merchant, more senior leader in merchandising, someone to work on under our CFO, a variety of roles, honestly, across an operations analyst. Just starting to build out each team, someone to work and support our wholesale relationship. Yeah, a lot of roles. I don't think you want me to list all of them.
Again, if you have a question, come up to the microphone.
Hi, thank you for your time. My name is Clinton Washington. So for the last couple of weeks, I've been working on a podcast called Clarity of Self, and it's all about mental health. And the most challenging thing that I found about working on this podcast is really getting more people to listen to it and honestly get the outreach up so I can get more partnerships and advertisers to work with my podcast. So what would be the best way to increase that outreach and so that I can produce some more people, also so I can get that partnerships and so I can make revenue off the podcast? Thank you.
Yeah. So I don't run a podcast, so that might be a better question for you.
I'm listening really close to this answer.
It's really, early days are super hard. I can just speak to my experience with Argent. Nobody cares about what you're building, and everyone just kind of looks at you as if you're crazy, and then until it turns into a thing, and then you see people that were kind of dismissive come around, but you take your belief and your conviction in what you're building and just be unapologetic about spreading the word. And so for me, I was capturing everyone's email address into a database, and social media is obviously a very important tool. Getting your friends to follow along first, but really that's not your core audience. So finding wherever that core audience is. So for me, it was women's conferences. So we launched at a women's conference, which was roughly 6,000 target consumers of ours. So in the COVID world, a little more challenging, but are there events? Are there groups, that align with what you're building? Is there a way for you to capture those people into your community? And then I think when it comes to advertising, it's about showing numbers. So that's a little bit later stage. So like being able to show real momentum and like a real appetite for what you're building. And then, being able to communicate the value of someone in like putting money into advertising on your channel. On the partnership piece, I think that that's a great way to accelerate. So someone that potentially has a big following that like overlaps with yours. And it's about being really buttoned up and presenting them with the opportunity and figuring out what value you bring to them that they don't necessarily have. That's probably one of the highest payoff like pieces that I think you could do, low-hanging fruit, I would say. So figuring out who could potentially like come on as a guest too. I think being pretty
strategic about that.
Yeah, strategic and developing thick skin to the no's, because you'll get a lot of no's, and being really buttoned up with how you approach people, So like, this is what I'm doing. I'm really passionate about it. Here's why I think it's important. Here's why I'm unique to this. Here's where it's going. And here's why like I would love to have you as a guest. And sometimes it could be positioned as like you're doing a favor for me, And I think there are a lot of people that like will support, Yeah,
absolutely. Great question. Any other questions, Ian?
Hello, I'm Ian. So you mentioned that being an entrepreneur isn't always glamorous. What is something that has been glamorous and been cool experience for you to kind of run?
Oh, I love that. I thought you were going to say the unglamorous, and I got a lot of those.
Cleaning toilets.
Clean toilets, driving U-Hauls. Right. What was the most glamorous? We have been to Hillary Clinton's office a couple times to help her get fitted for suits. She's been unbelievably supportive. I think maybe the coolest experience was actually meeting her in her initial reception to Argent. After the election, so in early 2017, it was her first public appearance. It was at a conference that we popped up at. And we kind of like faked our way into a photo line. And she was, that's what it's all about, Clinton.
Exactly.
So we faked our way into a photo line, and everyone was spending like 2 seconds with her. And I was like, this isn't going to work, whatever. And then I got up there and just held open my jacket. And I said, I quit my job at Cisco. We started this company. And her jaw dropped. And she was like, that is amazing. It has pockets. She's on the record as having complained about what we're doing. And so she ended up talking with us for a minute and a half, which like felt like forever, and ended up sort of walking out with me. And at the end she goes, we're going to do business. And I was like, this doesn't even make, what is happening? And then Huma Abedin popped out, who's her longtime chief of staff. And we had a conversation with Huma. And then that evening, I received a phone call from her assistant, and we started a working relationship in 2017, and she's still one of the most supportive people. And so every time she's in town, they'll invite us to come meet with her. She'll ask about our pop-ups, about our business. She's fully plugged in. Huma actually was in our photo shoot for fall. And she's just been insanely supportive. So that's I think one of the standout experiences.
Yeah, that's really cool. Other questions? Come on up, Michael.
Hey, my name is Michael, and I just had a question about the quality of your product, since you've been able to make a product that is high quality, functional, and affordable. So I think a big cornerstone with entrepreneurs is picking a product that is of the material that they would like to provide, but also affordable for them to manufacture. So when you started up this brand, were you able to pick exactly what you wanted by the quality, or did you make adjustments and upgrades over time as you were able to afford that as your brand grew?
Yeah, so first I'll say, if I had to start a business again, it would not be in apparel. I have so many friends that have started businesses that are just, like one SKU, and it's just so much easier to manufacture and scale. Apparel is a beast. In terms of our approach, I have always leaned on a creative counterpart And so that's not my expertise. My expertise is business, and my expertise is building the team that can execute on my vision. And so I've always had someone with a skill set in design, and now a team of designers. And it's really their responsibility to craft a line sheet and then go out and source fabrics. From day one, we haven't compromised on quality. I would say I actually take the opposite approach, but this is maybe not the right advice. But in some ways, you have the luxury of spending more upfront, and then you have to focus on your operational costs down the road and have a bit of a come to Jesus on like how much you're spending on things. Right now, I'll spend anywhere from $10 a yard to $45 a yard on fabric just because I want to make something. When you are at a company that has more eyes on your costs, there's more pressure for you to keep those costs down. So, but I think the name of the game for us is acquisition and building like a loyal customer base and that loves like the quality of the product. So I think for us, quality of product has always been paramount because the worst thing would be getting someone into your brand that hates their first purchase and doesn't come back. So just the lifetime value of that customer is like such a thing that we obsess over, and that all comes down to product quality. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Let's talk about raising the funds, because it's a known fact that women-owned businesses do not get as much funding as male-owned businesses. How did you go about raising the initial funds for the startup?
Well, first, I'm sad to report that I think today it came out that there's more venture money being invested now than ever, and the money that goes to women is down to 2.2%.
Wow.
So that's like staggering, especially with the higher success rate that female entrepreneurs have. So my approach to fundraising was, unfortunately, the reality is that women have to be a bit more buttoned up going into raise. And so I really focused on moving the business forward and creating some structure and creating some touch points with individuals that I thought would be great advisors / angel investors. And so I started meeting with them before I was even considering raising money, and created a cadence where they were watching me build out the concept, move the product forward, move the business forward in a way that made them want to invest in me, because first checks generally are someone just believing in you as an individual. And so I cobbled together over a year and a half, $1.5 million, which sounds like a lot, but like for what I'm doing, it's not that much. And just to give you a data point, like my peers at Everlane, if you all are familiar with the company Everlane, they went out a couple of years before me and in 1 week got $1.5 million, and it was from VCs, so venture capitalists, who purport not to invest in apparel, but of course they invested in these guys. So I just had to be scrappier. I had the deck stacked against me in terms of being in apparel and a female focused on a female specific issue. So after that round, we raised a bridge round, which was a little bit easier because then I had more data to point to. And then we raised a $4 million round led by Founders Fund, which is a top tier VC. They've invested in like Facebook, Palantir, Airbnb, SpaceX. I mean, they're a top tech investing company, and they were really attracted to the idea of getting into consumer. And so knowing that they're more analytical, I made it more about like storytelling with the data and with the numbers. And so really talked to them about how much potential there was in what we were building, but also doing a little bit of emotional storytelling too, and pointing to who we were dressing, and just making sure I checked every box in terms of how I was positioning this. Just so you all know, the annual spend in this category is $34.9 billion for women's workwear in the US. And so this is not a small idea, like this is a huge opportunity and nobody owns it. And so I think just being able to show those data points and why we're the ones to win the category has been convincing for investors.
What do you have to do to win the category, do you think?
I think the best compatriot brand to ours would be a Lululemon. So I don't know how familiar you all are with their journey, and they're definitely on the later stage of it, but early days, it was really about providing a transcendental experience. So it's like, it's not just about the product, and it's not just about the mission, it's about giving you so much more than that. And so they introduced just your hero workout pieces, your yoga pieces, your Wonder Under, whatever it's called, pant that was their hero silhouette. We have similar things in the workwear space, but we're also pushing color, and we're pushing what workwear looks like. For example, we're working on a denim collaboration, which will drop next year, but really showing like how the workplaces become more casual. I mean, there are a number of things that set us apart, but a lot of it is just the time that you invest. Retail is not an overnight business, which again is probably why I wouldn't do apparel again if I had to. It's generally a 7 to 10 year trajectory of really getting some scale underneath you. And so, yeah, I mean, it's about the team, it's about the timing, and it's about the brand, and whatever your like unique competitive advantages are, which I feel like we have a lot of them at this point.
Yeah. Guys, I think we have time for one more student question, but I'll throw another one out there. What do you see is, or what have you learned, let me rephrase that, what have you learned from the launch process, raising the money that you're now using currently in the business? What lessons?
A ton. I mean, so now I've started to advise other companies. The best piece of advice I got early on was from Howard Schultz, who he started Starbucks. I wish I could have actually applied the advice instead of having to go through it to actually understand the advice. But he said it's basically you against the world. And so when you're building a business, it genuinely is you and whoever you decide to involve in your corner, backs against the wall, against the world. Anyone that you include in your journey, you want to make sure that they have the same amount of conviction, the same amount of belief, grit, commitment, et cetera. And so be really careful that whoever you bring on doesn't just see you as a paycheck, which a lot of people do. The other mistake that founders make is you project your own passion and enthusiasm. So I've actually realized that I'm the worst person to hire for our team because I'm so insanely excited about the opportunity and the potential that I'll basically project that onto people and then convince myself that they're as excited and then hire someone that isn't the right fit for us. And so I've put infrastructure in place to prevent myself from doing that. But I've made many costly mistakes since day one like that I wouldn't change, but it's really helpful to be able to pay it forward. So when I advise companies now, I can definitely save them lots of money just through connecting them with the right resources and agencies and or talent. The people piece is really the most challenging.
You said you wouldn't change anything, but is there anything that you would do that you did not do now that you have more knowledge?
Yes and no. So I know because we're here and we survived COVID and we're positioned better than we ever would have been. So I would take COVID over again if I had to do it all over again. So I would say I'd change nothing. In hindsight, we could have grown quicker if we'd spent more on Facebook. There was an arbitrage opportunity on Facebook in 2016, 2017 that we didn't capitalize on. But I think if we'd grown and had to sustain a company of that size through COVID, it could have been fatal. So I don't really have regret for that reason.
All right, there you go. All right. Sally, I want to thank you. Unless there's one more student question, I need to wrap up and get you guys out of here, I know. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
For joining us. Let's give Sally a big round of applause, everyone. And as always, thank you so much for choosing the Class E podcast. Before I let you go, a big announcement. Now you have 2 ways to soak up the information and discussions shared in the Class E podcast. We've launched the Class E podcast YouTube channel. So check that out and watch our episodes there. Or of course you can find the audio version wherever you listen to your podcast. Also watch out for our brand new short segments, Everyday Entrepreneur. Learn in brief how everyday people become entrepreneurs as they share their stories with us. The Hill Institute is excited to announce another packed cohort of 25 aspiring entrepreneurs for the Greenville Starts program. This is an 8-week experience put on in partnership with the City of Greenville, South Carolina Department of Commerce, and SCRA that delivers the training, connections, and access to capital for startups of all types who are launching or growing their ventures in Greenville, South Carolina. If this program sounds like something you or a friend might be interested in or want to apply, simply Google Greenville Starts. Remember, the Classy Podcast is made possible through a partnership between the Hill Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship and the Communication Studies Department here at Furman University. This episode is produced by students Emma Kerr and Eliza Polich. I'm your host, Mary Sturgill. Until next time, dream big, everybody.